Good.
All right, everybody should see a screen with a cross stitch of a forearm.
We see.
Okay, and then let me find my slideshow. There we are. Okay, everyone can see the slide? We're good?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so here we go. So first I will do a quick bio. So yes, in addition to being a dancer, I've also been a massage therapist for over 32 years now. So I've been working for decades in both the arts and health sciences. And as a massage therapist, I've specialized in the treatment of orthopedic injuries. I worked with the New York Giants football team in the early 90s. I had a business affiliated with the Hospital for Special Surgeries in the early aughts. And then my latest gig was at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center for a number of years. So I have a really broad spectrum of experience, and in all cases, again, my specialty is orthopedic injury treatment. So extending those skills to artists and drawing is actually not that great a leap for me. I'm also certified in fitness instruction, and as you all know, I'm a cartoonist, so I'm kind of sprawled all over these different topics. I also, for a while, I wrote a column called Get a Grip at thecomicsbeat.com, which kind of expands the spectrum of Draw Stronger. So if you're curious, you can browse there. I have some interviews with some artists who have been injured and how they've dealt with injuries, and then other tips about exercise and self-care. And I wrote Draw Stronger, Self-Care for Cartoonists and Visual Artists, because my husband, who's also a cartoonist, Arsa Koriak, he and I were guest faculty at the Center for Cartoon Studies about 10 years ago. And in my classes, my students would all just sit with their sketchbooks in their laps and then like hunch over their sketchbook and start drawing. Even if there was like a desk or a drawing horse or, you know, like an easel around, a few of them would just prefer like the lap. And these were first year students, and I could just look at them and start to anticipate what injuries they were going to be having, because they were going from a more spotty drawing practice to a practice where they would be drawing at least 8 hours a day, at least 5 to 6 days a week. And that is like quite a physical, you know, challenge. And I looked for like really thorough, reliable information online. I couldn't find what I wanted. So it was like, okay, I guess I'll just write the book. And I did. But I'm not a doctor. I'm just a massage therapist. I'm not a doctor, which means I can't diagnose your injuries. Okay. I can treat your injuries after you've been diagnosed. So nothing I say during this presentation should be taken as me giving you specific medical advice, right? But we will talk about, you know, injuries and principles around injury prevention. And if you happen to fall into those cracks, that's great, but it's not me giving you medical advice. So self-care should be an integral part of work, play, and creative activities. Why? Because I'll tell you why. Because a lot of people are in pain from repetitive, sustained activities performed during both work and play, right? Our work postures and our play postures are very similar. And sometimes even as we take a break, we actually aren't giving our body a break from the demands of drawing or like concentrated work. So different activities with the same postures can lead to cumulative strain. So if you, let's say this is you or somebody like you, right? Sitting at your desk, drawing, you know, for a few hours in the day, hunched over your desk, taking breaks in the same position, right, on your phone, Then also doing, you know, a number of hours of work at your laptop or at another computer or keyboard, and then wrapping up your day with your stamp collection. You just spent your entire day in a posture that can actually, you know, cumulatively cause trouble and cause injury. So it really behooves us to kind of be aware of, you know, work habits and play habits. And this is particularly true with digital devices, right? So you'll hear me repeatedly say, like, you know, when you take a break, do not look at a screen, do not look at your phone, blah, blah, blah. You're going to get sick of hearing me say that, but I'm saying it for, you know, a good reason. Something that actually, you know, exists. So a majority of pain and dysfunction plaguing people performing physically focused work is from repetitive stress injury, which, you know, inhabits like a number of different types of tissues and structures. Repetitive stress injuries are caused by repeated and cumulative use and overload to a body part, which means that, let's say you're texting and you're just doing a lot of isolated thumb activity. And in the moment of texting, that thumb wiggling is not causing any problems. But over days and hours, that tendon that extends your thumb or moves it back and forth can start to become taxed and overused, and that could cause problems with the tendon or with the structures that help to like keep the tendon organized. So this can lead to repetitive stress injury. But it's not just for artists, it's not just your hands and wrists. You can also have repetitive stress injuries like pretty much anywhere from the tips of your fingers, you know, down to your butt, excuse the French, you know, but essentially upper body, torso, repetitive stress injuries are entirely possible. Just for the first part of this presentation is always kind of like the campfire horror story. I feel like I should have a flashlight under my face going, ooh, and then, you know, then there's, you know, nerve impingement, blah, you know, so everyone will get like a little, you know, I don't know, tense for the first section. And then things will lighten up because we'll start to talk about like, you know, prevention. So, but again, RSIs can occur anywhere in your body. They can cause mild to severe pain and dysfunction. Obviously, when they're causing mild pain, everybody or many people, including myself, will tend to like ignore it and just hope it goes away. And sometimes it will. But again, you know, mild pain is still kind of a bit of a wake-up call, you know, asking you to pay attention to what's going on. So I'm going to give you a number of quick anatomy lessons. Here we are looking at a muscle, a musculotendinous unit. A muscle, the muscle belly, is the part of the muscle that shortens and contracts and also lengthens. And then muscle attaches to bone through a tendinous connection, which is tissue that doesn't contract or stretch. It's just this really tough fibrous tissue. So we're going to look at the anatomy of a muscle in your forearm. This particular muscle attaches from a tendon up at the elbow to two bones. The muscle belly is in the forearm on the palm side of the hand. And then the tendons go down through the palm and out to your fingers. So if you hold up your arm with your palm facing you, and then you wiggle your fingers, you will see the muscle belly start to contract, right? And lengthen, and you will see the tendons being pulled by the muscle, pulling all the way onto the bones of the fingers to cause the fingers to bend and flex. And if you put your hands on your elbow, you'll feel the muscles tense up all the way up to the elbow. So some muscles that work your fingertips actually attach all the way out here, okay? So in this case, muscles, right? The muscle belly, muscles can go into spasm, right? They can weaken and they can be painful. Sometimes they can tear, but that's somewhat unusual with a repetitive stress injury. The tendon, though, pulling on the bone can start to weaken and become inflamed and sometimes tear. And the tendinous connections to the bones, right, and are all essentially subject to, they're vulnerable to injury. So with this muscle, there could be pain at the elbow or there could be pain in the fingertips, okay? And to make things even more complicated, on the hands and also on your feet, for you trivia buffs, there are connective tissue sheaths. It's tissue that's kind of like tendon tissue. Again, it doesn't contract, but it crosses over tendons to hold them in place. So one of the most famous areas where there's a connective tissue sheath and tendons running through it is the carpal tunnel, right? But then you also have connective tissue sheaths at the base of your fingers and your thumb, so that when the muscle contracts, it keeps the tendon going in the right direction and not like sliding around, right? So tendons can become inflamed on their own, but sometimes also when they slide through these sheaths, the sheaths may become inflamed and cause trouble, or the tendons may also become inflamed and cause trouble. So, and carpal tunnel syndrome, right, can sometimes be the result of tendons rubbing through that sheath. So here are some examples of repetitive stress injuries to tendons. One infamous type of RSI is called trigger finger. The gun is a pun. It's not, it's not clinically relevant, but the trigger finger affects essentially the tendons going to the thumb and the fingers and the sheaths, their sheaths. And what will happen is that the sheath will get inflamed and the tendon will get inflamed and the finger will get stuck in a flexed position. And then you literally have to force it open yourself. You can't just, move it yourself. And this can be a very painful condition. Another pathology affecting thumb tendons, the ones I was talking about on the side of the thumb here, is called de Quervain's tenosynovitis. During the exercise sequence, I'll actually add a stretch for this. People who do a lot of isolated thumb movements, texting, and also people with small children who do a lot of lifting up of infants tend to get this condition, this de Quervain's tenosynovitis, just saying. And then we have tennis elbow and golfer's elbow. So again, remember I was saying that the muscles of the palm and the fingers attach up on the elbow on the inside. If you get a tendinitis of the elbow on the inside of the elbow, that's from the muscles that bend the fingers and the wrist. So again, if you wiggle your fingers and you have your fingers on either side of your elbow, you'll feel the muscles bending the fingers on one side contracting and the muscles extending the fingers on the other side contracting, right? Tennis elbow is a tendinitis of the muscles that straighten the wrist and straighten the fingers. So golfer's elbow is for bending. Tennis elbow is the tendinitis for straightening or extending the fingertips, right? So sometimes people will actually get elbow pain from drawing injuries, but they don't associate them because why would wiggling your fingers affect your elbow? Well, I just told you, so that's why, right? So again, there are all of these different types of connections that can happen with these types of injuries. And as I said before, muscle spasm can happen. So tight muscles can also cause pain. writer's cramp is a very infamous form of dystonia or atonia, where, the muscles really go into severe spasm. And now guess what? It's time for another anatomy lesson, so I can horrify you with other types of injuries. Often when people get back pain, their first fear is that they've like slipped a disc or done something to an intervertebral disc, which is not always the case, but, and we'll talk about that later, but I'm going to give you a bit of an anatomy lesson about how the intervertebral discs work. So here is the side view of a skull, the vertebral column, the rib cage and the pelvis from the side. And then here is a close-up of 2 vertebrae in the lower back. So the vertebral column essentially makes a tube, and your spinal cord runs through the tube. And nerves leave the spinal cord and go out to like everything else in your body. Your guts, your muscles, your skin, your everything. And separating the vertebrae are intervertebral discs, which are essentially a fibrous, kind of elastic, fibrous, cartilaginous shell with a squishy liquid center. So, and the liquid center helps to create more elasticity so that the disc will absorb energy and then release energy more powerfully. So here are 2 little graphics. Discs essentially absorb and release compressive forces. So let's say this disc is about 25. You can see the little liquid center in it. Here the disc is being compressed evenly. And if you think about it as a water balloon, it's not quite that elastic, but you get the idea, right? If you press in evenly, energy is absorbed and there's a little bit of spread, right? But it's spreading evenly in all directions. And then when you release, and if you press unevenly on it, right? The liquid and the balloon, or in this case, the disc, is going to move somewhat in the opposite direction of the pressure. But when you release the pressure, so like if you're bending forward and let's say you're shoveling snow, because who knows, it may snow soon, unless you're in Florida, and then it won't, but I don't know who's where anymore. Anyway, so if you're bending forward, who knows, and picking up a baby or a toddler or whatever, you're going to have more compression on the front of your disc, right? And the disc is going to start to kind of move toward the back. But once you put the kid down, voila, it just pops back, it springs back into shape. But here's the thing. If you're in a slouched position, then you are often putting cumulative compressive forces on the front of your discs, and that can start to, chronically push them toward the back of your spine and your nerves. And as you age, your tissues start to dehydrate. And over time, your discs will start to compress. So they'll start to get a little bit smaller, which is actually, the whole archetype of like little old ladies, like older people becoming little. Part of that is that your discs start to dehydrate and shrink. So even if you have perfect posture, you're still going to lose like ½ an inch or so if all 24 of your discs lose like a millimeter of, volume or something. So inevitably, the disc will start to compress, it will start to dehydrate, and it will also start to weaken, because the tissues that make you elastic, right, that like help you stretch and rebound, also start to like go away, which is why you get wrinkles when you're older, because it's not just your discs, it's your face and your liver and your gut and everything, and your muscles and everything else, right? So I'm going to like freak everybody out about aging too. Anyway, so if sometimes, so it's easier to overload the disc. And if there's an asymmetrical pressure, let's say you bend over and you pick up that grandchild and they're 5 years old and you didn't realize how much they weigh, you can, in theory, like cause the disc to like push out and possibly push into the spinal cord or push into the nerves as they leave the spine. And this can happen in your neck. It more typically happens in your neck or in your low back, and usually not around your rib cage. It can, but that would be very rare. But fear and slouching, right, is also going to, like poor posture cumulatively over time can also start to lead to disc injuries. However, when something presses on a nerve, it doesn't have to be a disc. It could be a muscle or a disc, but it could also be a bone or tight connective tissue, like a ligament or like some fascia or something else. So people sometimes when they get nerve compressions, nerve entrapments, they automatically assume it's a disc injury. And I'm going to say, no, it's not necessarily a disc injury, right? But like we just did the anatomy of what a disc injury is. Let's see. So let's look at, so also I should just say nerve entrapments, nerve impingements or entrapments can cause shooting pain or tingling or numbness, right? Sometimes people will get like traveling pain or lightning-like pain, or they'll just get localized pain. But also like numbness, which is not pain, is still indication of nerve injury. And nerves are delicate creatures, so you need to treat them well. If you think you might have like a nerve impingement, you really need to go see a physical therapist or a healthcare professional to like, you know, get that organized, because they're a little more, they're more delicate than muscle and tendon. So anyway, but here are some different types of impingements. So impingements or entrapments in the neck are often called thoracic outlet syndrome. They can cause neck pain, arm pain, or hand pain. So again, sometimes people will feel hand and wrist pain and they'll just start doing stretches and corrective exercises for their hand and wrist, but the problem can actually be in their neck, right? So again, you know, we will talk about when should you go see a doctor, right? Because sometimes you should get a diagnosis so you know whether the problem is actually here or here and what's causing it. So thoracic outlet syndrome. Sometimes people will get an impingement of the nerve that makes the funny bone sensation, right? When you hit your elbow on your ulnar nerve, you'll get like little shooting things out your finger and your fourth finger here. That entrapment of that nerve is called cubital tunnel syndrome. And then the most famous nerve impingement, the most feared and dreaded amongst the artists, is carpal tunnel syndrome, right? Which is an impingement of essentially the median nerve, which starts in your neck and then goes all the way over here, right? And that will cause pain, tingling, and numbness into the first 3 fingers and maybe part of your 4th finger. So that's another one. But wait, that's not all. There's one more bonus impingement, and that is from the lower back. Muscles, connective tissue, or bone or a disc can be impinging on a nerve that can cause low back pain, hip pain, or pain down the leg or even in the foot, and that is called sciatica. See, isn't this like the campfire horror story? Like I really do need the flashlight under my face, like to give me the ghost lighting. But again, we'll get on to happier things a little bit later. So, and again, so entrapment in the neck or back can cause pain in the hand or foot, right? So again, sometimes the cause of your wrist pain is not actually your hand or wrist, and it may take a professional to help you determine what is actually causing the problem. Sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes it does. And sitting in a slouched position, right, this kind of curved position is going to put more pressure on discs. So if you're sitting like this and you've got, you know, an artistic career going for, I don't know what, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, that kind of strain over time can really start to add up. And if you spend your time on your phone in the same position, then you may like actually accelerate the process. So, it may not be until, you may not have to wait until your 50s to like have this happen. So anyway, and you'll hear horror stories about, some young people who have neck or back pain because of their, their postures. Anyway, I'm just trying to scare everybody so that you'll like develop good physical practice and never have to. And then hopefully 40 years from now, you'll be like, I've been doing this all this time and nothing's ever happened. And I'll be like, yes, my job.
It's working, Kriota. I'm totally scared, but also like gonna start a new life tomorrow.
That's great. I'm so glad. So here's an injury that shouldn't be overlooked that actually isn't mentioned in Draw Stronger, but you never know, it might turn up in something else I do later. It is, and it was supposed to go into an article in The Beat and they didn't publish it. So we're going to talk about it here. And that is eye strain, right? So digital eye strain is kind of all the rage right now. Everybody talks about that, but you can also get eye strain, just using good old paper and ink or whatever. But eye strain can affect posture. It can lead to additional neck pain and tension. It can cause headache, as can like neck pain and tension. Other symptoms include light sensitivity, blurred vision, back pain, dry eyes, and more. So eye strain can also lead to other physical symptoms, right, that could be confused or not identified as being caused by eye strain. So again, taking breaks to rest your eyes is also important. Now, before we pause for questions, here's a question that people often ask, and this is actually also in the book. The question is, do I need to see a doctor? Or how do I know if I need to see a doctor? So first things first, which is if you think you need to see a doctor for an injury, then go to the friggin' doctor. Like if you think it, then just go, right? Because also there's a lot of mental anxiety about trying to decide whether or not to go. So just go, it can be very important. I'll also say, before we get into these qualifiers, I should also just say, if you get a diagnosis from the doctor, then you'll know the problem that is causing the injury. What I often do with my general practitioner, my GP, right, is I'll go to her and I'll say, I've got shoulder pain, I've got neck pain, blah, blah, blah. Can you give me a referral for physical therapy? And then I'll go to the physical therapist and they will do a thorough workup and assessment and tell me what's going on. So your general practitioner isn't always trained in orthopedics, right? But depending on what state you live in and like what your health insurance is like, you may need a referral. Some states you don't have to get a referral. You can just go to a physical therapist without seeing your doctor first. And that works fine too. The other thing is that some people do not like to use traditional medicine to treat their injuries. And believe me, that's okay. But you need to know what you're treating first. Because let's say you have a nerve impingement and you go for a massage therapists can help with nerve impingements if they're caused by muscle or connective tissue. But if they're caused by a bone or a disc, then massage is not going to be the thing that is going to really help you treat, or neither is acupuncture, right? Like we'll treat your symptoms, but we will not treat the underlying causes. But if you have a tendonitis or something else, it may be treatable, muscle spasm, et cetera. So anyway, you just kind of have to know what the cause is, because then you will know how to treat it correctly. So you can go see a doctor or see someone who can give you an evaluation, and then you can make decisions about how you want to get it treated once you know what the underlying cause is. And that essentially is the big problem. Like if it's pain in your hand, you need someone to tell you that the problem's in your neck sometimes, or it is in your hand, and then blah, blah. Okay. But anyway, I can't emphasize, you know, the necessity of getting a diagnosis, and then you can make your treatment decisions as you go, and that's entirely up to you. So, should you go see a doctor? You should if you're in intense pain, okay? Because if it's super, super painful, you know, it's like if it hurts like crazy, then maybe it's a good thing to go see a doctor. I'm getting a new hip because it hurts like crazy, and all my other treatments are no longer, you know, doing it. If you experience shooting pain, tingling, or numbness, this could indicate nerve damage. And again, like I said, nerves are more delicate. So you need to make sure, like, go get an assessment so you can like treat it and get it, you know, back into a healthy state faster. If you can't draw or hold a stylus comfortably, then again, go see a doctor. Or if the condition doesn't improve within 3 to 5 days. So if you've taken steps, if you're resting and doing other things to like make it better and it isn't getting better, like after 5 days, you need to see somebody so they can tell you what's going on so that you can like then take steps to make it work out better. If the condition continues to worsen, go see a doctor or a PT, right? And so these two qualifications are usually not going to happen with repetitive stress injuries. You may get swelling, but discoloration or excessive bruising or like other deformity usually will happen from some kind of like more violent accident. So sometimes someone will be like, they'll fall off their bike, you know, they'll fall, put their hand out, something will happen, they'll be okay in the moment and they won't think about it. And then like a day later or hours later, they'll start to get swelling or, you know, bruising or whatever. And if these things start to happen, then you should probably go see somebody about what's going on. So this is very rare, but if you were in an accident, car accident, bike accident, something else, and you didn't at the time feel like you needed to do anything, and then suddenly you're having trouble drawing, you know. So now I'm going to stop the share. Hello. Emma, can you be or Tom, you're here. One of you, which one of you wants to be the chat moderator?
Well, Tom has a question in the chat that is, how do you find a good doctor to be able to get a diagnosis from?
That's a very good question. One thing I will do is like, I have a long-term relationship with my GP. So like I said, I will go to my GP and then just say, I need a referral for a physical therapist. But essentially, you can do a number of different things. You can ask your friends. If you know someone who's injured, ask them who they go to see, right? Because that might be very useful. When I was looking for an orthopedist this time around, because my insurance switched, I picked a practice that I wanted to go to, essentially NYU, because I'm teaching there now. So I looked down the list of orthopedists and I was like, oh, okay, here's someone in their 50s. So they've been doing this forever, which means that even if they're not brilliant, they're still really good. And I will be boring to them because they'll know exactly what's going on with me. So like, I'll look for someone with like a length of practice. If I want an orthopedist or a specialist, you know, someone who knows, whose biography kind of says like they specialize in, if they're an orthopedist, specialize in hand, neck, shoulder, whatever, you know, that kind of thing. But essentially just asking around a lot and looking for someone who's been in practice for at least 10 years is kind of what I recommend. And then there's always, you know, in terms of your insurance, there's always that as well. So sometimes it's just a crapshoot. And you know, when you're looking in your insurance files and looking at the doctors they will accept, look at their biographies, and sometimes just finding someone that you resonate with will help a lot.
second question, but I have one before that.
Sure.
Kind of related to picking a doctor. If you're someone who doesn't have insurance or like access to healthcare is kind of difficult, what are your recommendations in terms of like seeking out affordable ways of like dealing with issues?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And frankly, I don't know if I'm equipped to answer it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't, it's like, that's a very good question. What I would probably do, and again, this depends on the state you are living in, right? But you might go online and look at physical therapists. And so you just cut to the chase and then contact, a physical therapy office, see what they would be charging you for an assessment and a treatment. Tell them you don't have insurance. And if they're not, if they are too pricey for you, you can also ask them if they have any recommendations, because they will probably be able to help you find somebody.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
yeah. Tom says go to the local university. Smiley face.
That's a good, yes, if you're a student, definitely.
He has a second question, which is overworking a weak tendon can inflame it. Is there anything we can do to strengthen our tendons?
Yes. So in the book, there are a number of different exercises that you can do. And rest is also very important. We'll be talking about these treatments, like the things we can do is like the next section. So,
Okay, well, maybe I'll wait with the next question and we'll see if we answer it during the next section, and
okay.
I'll repeat it then.
Anything else? Anybody?
Catherine had a question too, Emma. Do you see that right above mine?
I did see that one, but I was thinking maybe it would be answered in the next section because it is a little bit of treatment and prevention. But we can ask it now. Do blue light bar, like the blue filter glasses, help with eye strain related problems?
Yeah, actually, that is going to be answered in the next section.
I thought it might be.
Yeah, so I will answer that question, but you're going to have to wait. The suspense. It's very exciting. Is that it?
Does
Anybody
else have any questions? You can put them in the chat or unmute now. And
you can just unmute and ask.
Yeah.
Anybody? Nothing?
There's a couple in the chat. Amanda asked, does the way that you grip a pen or stylus factor into injuries? Like, is there a way we should be holding it that it's going to?
Yes, it does. And I will talk about that also in the next.
Leah wants to know, they're curious about how eye strain leads to back pain.
So one thing that often happens with eye strain is that people tend to keep moving their face closer and closer to their screen or to the surface, their drawing surface or whatever. And so your head weighs as much as a bowling ball, 8 to 13 pounds. Think about that the next time you go bowling and you're rolling those balls down the aisle, down the alley, whatever it's called. Anyway, so if you imagine holding a bowling ball in your hand and then tipping it forward and holding it there for hours at a time, right? That would really do a number on the muscles of your wrist. And the thing is that eye strain, again, pulls us into poor posture because we're struggling to see what we're looking at. So that is part of the problem. Also, like if you have a headache, when our bodies are in pain, we also tend to like curl up a little bit. So like headache posture can also happen, right? So pain can alter your posture. And then again, like pulling the bowling ball size head forward and like out of the line of gravity is also like a major factor for eye strain issues.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's all our questions for now.
All righty. Well, then yeah, I'll go back to the screen share. And all right, here we are. So, although technology changes, right, human physiology doesn't. I mean, it does in its own way, but it doesn't change because we have desktops or iPads or phones or whatever. So the basic principles of injury prevention are essentially true regardless of your medium, right? Regardless of whether you're using digital drawing media or, you know, paper, you know, no bright, whatever, no screen, and you're using a drawing desk or a sketchbook. So we'll look at traditional self-care techniques, but we can also kind of like transpose a lot of this information into like digital information as well. It's all kind of working from the same pot of self-care stew. So posture is super, super important for prevention of pain throughout your entire body. So if you are like working with portable media, sketchbook, you know, iPad, whatever, intense focus on a low and unsupported device or a smaller screen or a surface is really hard on your eyes, and it tends to bring us into poor posture, right? So also, like if you're in a, these are some of my hapless students at CCS, right? Drawing like while they're sitting at their desk. And this person is left-handed. So they're at a smaller, they're working on a smaller surface, and they're having to like essentially maintain a bit of a twisting posture while they're drawing because of the way the desk is like constructed, right? And everybody here is like kind of slouchy or whatever, you know, it's like people aren't sitting there with perfect upright posture, right? So anyway, and here I am. I have my iPad on my purse, so I have propped my device up somewhat, but obviously not enough because I'm still slouching as I'm drawing. I got better later. I do have photos that like show me drawing with better posture, but you know, again, sitting on the floor, these types of positions make it really easy to slouch over. And then here is a cartoonist at a festival, and look how they are looking at, you know, their face is essentially parallel to their sketchbook, and that is putting so much strain on their neck and back. And I suspect that this is a very common drawing posture for this person, who doesn't know I have their picture here, which is why I blacked out their face. So good posture reduces chronic loading of the back, the neck, the shoulders, right? It reduces pressure on nerves as they leave the spinal cord if there's any disc asymmetries. Sometimes if someone has a disc impinging a nerve, the treatment is corrective exercises that bring you into better posture, because it will literally kind of like realign the vertebra and help to reduce like pressure on the intervertebral disc. So here are some guidelines for good posture. If you imagine a plumb line, a straight line like running from the ceiling to the floor, when you're standing up, the line would go through your ear, through your shoulder, through the vertebra of your lower back. Like that's hard to know, but that's okay. Through the hip, through the knee, and through the ankle, right? We have curves in our spine. So even when we're standing with a straight spine, there are curves in the spine that are normal and natural. And actually when these curves flatten out, then that can also cause trouble. But depending on how much mass you have, if you have a greater trunk mass, your curves will be deeper. And that's like normal and good. And if you're thinner and have much less trunk mass, your curves will be more shallow. And the dynamics of this are very obvious with women who are pregnant. If you think about pregnancy, everybody think about pregnancy, like as that fetus gets larger, the woman's lower back and upper back start to curve more and more to accommodate that weight and that mass that is like growing in their belly. And then after the baby is born, their spine will start to straighten up again up to a certain point, but then they're carrying a baby and they're getting horrible posture for different reasons, right? But again, the body is dynamic. So we have spinal curves. When we sit with a straight spine, we still have curves in our back, which is a good thing, right? But you think about the ear, the shoulder, like the middle of the waist and the hips. And this alignment is also true for sitting. But also when you're sitting, you want your hips to be essentially flexed to 90 degrees, your knees flexed to 90 degrees, and your feet flat on the floor. And you want to keep a little gap between your knee and the back of the chair while you're working. So we're all going to do a little exercise here. I want everybody to like kind of sit on the edge, well, not quite the edge of their chair, but like bring your feet onto the floor, sit with good posture, right? Just feel what it feels like to have like your pelvis kind of organized up and down, your spine nice and straight, your shoulders relaxed, your feet grounded. And now I want you to take one leg and cross your ankle over your knee. Right. And feel what that does to your pelvis. Can you feel your pelvis starting to tip? Right. So as you cross, like if you're sitting in a figure 4 position like this, your pelvis will start to tip and your lower back will start to round. Right. So now put your foot back on the floor. Feel your lower back and your pelvis be organized. And now cross your ankles. And odds are very good that even with your ankles crossed, you're going to feel your pelvis start to scoot forward and under. Right? Okay, so now put your feet back on the floor square. So as I work, like, you know, every once in a while, suddenly I'll realize my ankles are crossed as I'm working. And, you know, I'll also notice that I'm really slouched over. And the minute I put my feet back, you know, in place, the rest of me will start to stack up. So this is also why, like, having your feet in a grounded position, hips at 90 degrees, knees at 90 degrees, is actually also intrinsic to a good upright spine. Okay. So you can also improve your posture by bringing your media in line with and closer to your eyes. So drawing desks, you know, there are, you can get like portable adjustable drawing desks. Like I think I have one in my office, my studio, whatever it's called, because my desk is essentially the kitchen table that I had when I was 5 years old that my mother had. So I have like a portable drawing desk so I can angle the desk, right? Because when your work is flat, visually it's distorted. And then what happens is people will try to like lean over their drawing so they can see the drawing more accurately. So again, if you angle and elevate the drawing, that will help a lot. Here are some pictures of like Cintiqs in a workstation, right? So again, like angling the Cintiq, angling the workstation, and I showed you my iPad, right? I had on my purse, like if I have my iPad and I'm drawing on my iPad, if I'm at a table or a desk or something, I'll just put my purse on the table and then I'll shove my iPad onto my purse and try to mold it into like a little like mini drawing desk, right? So you can improvise with materials around you, roll up a sweater or whatever, but you like getting that angled, raised drawing surface is going to be very helpful for your posture. Sometimes you have perfect posture, right? You have your angled drawing surface, and you're drawing with perfect alignment, but if you're like drawing at an easel or a standing desk or whatever, and your arm is like held out for hours at a time, you can end up having shoulder pain, or sometimes even if you're like in perfect whatever, you can still have some severe damage if you're working very hard. In the Comic Speed, in the Get a Grip articles, I interview Nate Piekos, who is a letterer. And this is kind of a fictitious picture of him. He ended up having a very severe shoulder tendonitis that also like turned into neck issues, because although he was lettering and standing with very good posture at his Cintiq, he would be essentially like this for 8 hours a day. And then to relax, he would play guitar, like another like very, like very upper body, like heavy hobby. So for him, what he needed to do, since he was working digitally, instead of using a Cintiq, he was able to go to this fix, which ends up working for some people and it's problematic for others. But again, this is a standard fix if you're having like shoulder issues, and this will raise you into better posture. So elevating your screen and then adding a tablet to draw on at waist height so that the shoulder essentially falls down to the side, and then effort, essentially exertion, is really just only happening in the hand and wrist. This could happen. The thing about this is when you draw, like I can't draw on a tablet to save my life, and I would have to literally retrain myself to be able to do this. But it may be the only, like if you're injured enough, it may be the only way you can salvage your practice, right? So sometimes when we're injured, we're going to have to like physically retrain our bodies to create work in a way that is less stressful to our injuries. That doesn't always happen. Like, I don't mean to scare everybody, but sometimes things will take a little practice. And yeah, and my spouse Bob, he draws great on a tablet. I'm so jealous. Like he can just perform miracles, and I just cannot. So I would really have to, and he's never injured. It's amazing. Anyway, he also takes breaks and does his exercises. So again, prop up your phone, your tablet, your sketch pad if you're away from your desk. My head's a little bit more up here, so what can I say? But still, it's not great. I should be sitting at that desk back there. I shouldn't be sitting on the floor. So again, a straight spine, easy viewing of the work, and comfortable arm and hand positions are key. Another question I often get asked is, what's better, a standing desk or a sitting desk? And the answer is both. Right? If you're only standing, you may have trouble. You may have some repetitive stress issues, like with your feet or your knees or your low back or your hips. If you're only sitting, then you get into the other issues. So what I like to do is actually alternate. Also, if you're on a budget, like getting the desk that will literally raise and lower itself can be very expensive. I have a milk crate for my laptop. So when I'm working on the scripts for my work, I'll just stand with my laptop on a milk crate. And then when I'm drawing, I sit with my Cintiq at the desk. So I'm able to like alter my position somewhat. I'll also just like play with my chair height and different things to keep altering my position throughout the day. But there is no one way that is perfect. You have to like do some experimenting and figure out what works best for you. And posture is half the story, right? If you're working with a stylus, pencil, digital, whatever, it's really important to keep your hand relaxed. Do I have here? So if you're holding on to a stylus or something, if you look at your fingers as you're gripping it and you see that the bottom part of the finger is like blanching, right? Well, there's redness above it, but there's blanching. Then you're gripping your stylus too tightly. You're essentially squishing all the blood out of your fingertips, right? And wherever you're having contact. So that's an indication that you're holding the stylus too tightly. Another indication is when people hyperextend. So see my finger there, that's good alignment. That is not, right? So when you like act double jointed and like hyperextend, that again is like too much tension, and that's going to cause problems. Another problem is if you're pulling the stylus toward you with your fingers instead of using your hand, right? Some people will anchor their hand on the page and literally just move the stylus this way. And that's going to cause a lot of tension in the palmar muscles of the hand, right? And also actually along the back of the hand as well. So another way to know or to assess yourself to see if you're holding your stylus too tightly is to see if you have like really big calluses. And sometimes people will like wear their calluses as proof of their devotion and their genius. Like people, it's like there's a real culture about having to suffer for your art. Like in the 18th century, if you were going to be a good poet, you had to have tuberculosis practically, right? You would be a wasted, like early dying, like skeletal, like poet lounging under trees, like with a flowing shirt on, and everybody just kind of got into this idea that like your imminent death and illness was like making you a genius. So anyway, calluses don't signify imminent death, but people still use them as a sign that they're a deserving artist because they work so hard. But I draw on average of 7 hours a day, 4 days a week, and like I have a little, the skin is pretty soft there. It's like I have bumpy, knobby hands, but it's like I draw a lot and I don't have calluses because I actually make sure that I'm not gripping my pen too tightly or gripping my stylus too tightly, right? So it's very important. Hand tension is going to overburden the muscles of the hand and forearm, right? So keep your hand relaxed. And yeah, when people start to like go, look how I suffer for my work, it's like, at least they don't have tuberculosis, but it's like that suffering thing, forget it, you don't need to suffer. And then there's eye strain. So computer use strains eyes more than reading print material because people tend to blink less while they're using computers, okay? And blinking is really important to keeping your eyes moist. They tend to view digital screens at less than ideal distances or angles. Like people will put their laptop on their lap, they'll, put it on the table, whatever, it's problematic. If you can adjust the screen, you essentially want the screen at eye height so that you don't have to tip your head over, which I know is not always easy, but you can try to do something. Also, if you have devices that have glare or reflection, like here, there could be glare from the screen, but also if the lighting setup is like reflecting light into your eyes, that can sometimes happen. It's important to make sure that you're aware of like, are you by a window? Like, is there a light overhead that's like, reflecting? There are all sorts of factors there that you need to be aware of. Sometimes devices with poor contrast between the text and the background can also be problematic. Is it better to have like white letters on a black background or black letters on a white background? That's really a matter of choice. I don't personally, it doesn't seem to make that big of a difference. But, if we're blinking less, we should blink more. Sounds silly. Or use eye drops or something to keep yourself lubed up. People with contact lenses tend to like be a little more sensitive to that kind of thing. Again, be mindful of the position of your computer, pay attention to light sources, the brightness of your screen, things like that, right? So set yourself up to like to make yourself feel as relaxed as possible. So okay, so the blue light thing, right? The big issue with the blue light thing. The thing about computers is, yes, they emit blue light, but they don't clinically emit so much that it can be perceived as like an absolutely discernible hazard. So the computer screen blue light issue is still back and forth. But here's the thing, like I still use the like orangey screen app on my computer because I tend to get, 4 days of migraines, right? Like I tend to reduce the blue light because blue light tends to trigger my migraines. Some people like the orange, like the yellow or orangey tinted glasses, and they feel like that really helps. But again, testing with that is also inconclusive. So if you were interested in using those, experiment with the cheapest pair you can get your mitts on. Do not pay a ton of money for something that is not statistically necessarily going to help you, right? Get a cheap pair, see if it helps, and then if it helps, you can get a more expensive pair if you don't want people to realize how cheap your pair of, plastic yellow glasses are or whatever. But there's no data to or evidence right now to show that it's like a definitive fix. So again, it will work for some people and not for others. And if you were one of those people that it works for, that's great. Definitely use that stuff. And if you're not, then don't worry about it, because you'll have to find a different way to cope. But again, it's not a guarantee that it should be working. So that's my 2 cents about the blue light and then how to cope with it. And like I said, I use the app on my computer that just kind of, yellows everything slightly, because it does actually really help for me with the blue light and my migraines. Now, there is a rule called the 20-20-20 rule. It's usually very popular. Most people know about this. As you're working every 20 minutes, you're supposed to look 20 feet away from your screen at a distant object for 20 seconds. Does it really have to be 20 feet? Just look as far away as you can. If you've got a window, look out the window. If you're in a smaller room, just look at the most distant object you can see in the room, right? Because your eye, as we focus our eyes on nearer and further objects, there are muscles in our irises that will squeeze and relax to make things come into focus. So when you're looking at something distant, it literally uses your eyes in a different way, and it will give your eyes a rest. So the 20-20-20 rule is pretty good. 20 seconds is not that long. It takes a lot of discipline to take breaks. I'm just going to say that right now, because everyone's like, 20 minutes, that's too much. But it's again, calluses, working hard for hours at a time, that's easy. It's like, oh, I'm on a roll. This is great. I have to keep going. It's so good. It's, you're a badass cartoonist if when you're on a roll, you can go, oh, hell, I have to take a break now. And you take your 5-minute break and then you come back. Then you're a badass. If you're like, no, I have to keep working, then you're just a weenie. Because everybody does that. So you're just making excuses. You're not a badass artist. Kriota has spoken. All right. So I'll stop the share. We'll do some quick questions and we'll go into exercise after this. Okay.
Emma?
Anybody?
Do you want to take these ones, Tom?
If you'd like, sure.
Okay, I think I'm frozen. What's going on?
No, you don't look frozen, but Erla, you can just ask Kriota unless you'd like me to speak it.
Yeah,
but,
okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a chair that you can recommend? Currently, I'm using a kitchen table chair with a pillow, because I think I do need to get a desk chair, but I just haven't. So I just was wondering if you had any recommendations.
The main thing I recommend is something with an adjustable height.
Okay.
Because the height, again, is going to help you get your hips and your legs organized. And that's the most important thing. The thing about when you work, I heavily suggest you do not lean back in your chair. Even when people have ergonomic chair backs, if you're leaning against the chair, what will happen often is that people's heads will start to come forward, even as they're sitting upright. So I'll sit kind of in the middle of the seat of my chair so that my feet are on the ground, my knees are away from the edge of the chair, and I'm not relying on the backrest. For some people, that's not physically possible, but for many people it is. And so and I really feel like that helps to kind of strengthen the back and just keep you in better posture.
Okay.
But again, the height adjustment, I think, is the most important thing.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
something cushy for your butt. So you're,
Good
that's
idea.
important.
Thanks.
Good. Anybody else?
I had a question related to chairs. You mentioned in one of the images to keep a gap between the knee and the chair. Why is that exactly?
So some of the veins, like in the back of the knee,
Uh-huh.
if you're pressing on those, then they can't get blood up from your calf.
Uh-huh.
And there are deep veins underneath your calf muscles that also run up the back of the knee. So if you have like a surface pressing on them, then it's going to be harder to get like the venous return going. And so you might get some leg swelling or some other things from prolonged sitting. So you want to, again, promote circulation by just not pressing into the back of the knee. It's like airplane travel. Not a good idea there either, really.
Any other questions? I have another one, but I don't know if it's better at the end. Are you going to do another session of Q&A or?
I will, but you can ask me anyway.
Well, I don't want it to be too tangential. It's more of a well, I'll put it in the chat. I've just heard of this one particular method, and I can never vet certain things. I can't tell if things are like, wellness culture crazy scam or totally
Right.
legit. And so there's this thing called the Agescu method. Have you heard of this? It's about.
I haven't.
Oh, you haven't? It's in
No.
the chat. You can check it out. I've heard a couple anecdotes where somebody was like, "Oh, I've had this terrible neck pain, blah blah blah," and then they say, "Oh, I was checked out by this person related to this method," and they said, "Oh, the problem's in your hip." And then after some therapy and stuff, they were pain free. And I was just asking if that was something you understood. It's in the chat, but if you don't know about it, then it's probably not.
Right.
Not anything we can investigate in the next 20 seconds. But
yeah, I know. Since I have more presenting to do.
Yeah.
But that is also like a typical kind of like, massage body worker kind of response.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you have pain somewhere. Often part of the reason practitioners will sometimes say the problem is your hip, the problem is your blah, 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 is because they're also doing like postural assessments.
Right.
Or they're doing other kinds of physical assessment, and they're like looking for ways that are going to essentially bring your body into better alignment and better harmony.
Yeah,
Some forms of body work will also essentially do energetic assessments. So they will like look for blocked energy flow. You can always try these methods, again, as long as they're not too expensive. But if you don't get results within like 2 or 3 sessions, then you need to like go on to something else. Sometimes I'll have patients who come to me and they have some kind of injury, and depending, like if it seems a little tricky or whatever, like I'll essentially make a deal with them. If they're a first-time patient, I'll say, look, we'll do some massage therapy on you for like 2 or 3 sessions. But boy, if it's not getting better by that 3rd session, then I'm sending you on to like someone higher up that ladder, right? Because you need a diagnosis so that we can treat you more correctly. And maybe I should not be treating you. So, you can, like if other people have like really good experiences with a form of body work or something else that you would like to try, again, that's fine. But if your body isn't responding the way you had hoped it was responding, then it's time to like either find another form or again, like go see someone who can give you a diagnosis so you can like actually pick and choose how you're going to get treated after that. But with most repetitive stress injuries, I'm going to say physical therapy is like a major, major key. Like I am just a PT junkie. I go to physical therapy for like every stupid arthritis. I have a lot of arthritis in my body from like dancing and then also being a massage therapist for, 3 decades. So, when I'm getting neck pain, when I'm getting hip pain, when I'm getting knee pain, whatever, like I'm just, I'm on a first name basis with all the physical therapists at the office I go to. But, it's really, it's really great because the exercise and the extra work you do is like something that you can just continue to do for years if you need to. When you get a flare up, then you know what to do. Like you do the exercise and you often don't have to go back to the practitioner, right? So the body work will like help to relieve your symptoms, but it often won't treat the underlying factors. And physical therapy and corrective exercise will treat the underlying factors. So like, I can't tout that stuff enough. And I know if you don't have health insurance, it's really problematic, but it is a really worthwhile investment because, you'll get treated. It's a treatment that you'll be able to use, essentially forever. So it can be really well worth it. And it's non-invasive. But yeah, again, you can do the other stuff, but if it's not working, then do something else. Okay.
Do we have any other questions, anybody? And Susan, I assume the question about standing was answered in the presentations, but if not, feel free to chime in.
It was, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Kriota, I guess we're
Okay.
ready for our exercise.
All right. So yeah, so I will do the share. I'll read through a few more slides, then I'll like show you the exercises we'll do. I'll undo the share and then I'll lead them for you. Okay, Sally, thanks. Oops. Wait a minute. Okay, let me get the share going. Once again. Okay. So again, regardless of your medium, your most important instrument is your body. So you need to think like an athlete. So if you are not used to exercising and you need medical clearance, get medical clearance from your doctor, right? Exercise should be pain-free. If you're doing something and it's painful, you should find a way to make it painless or stop doing it if that's the only way to make it painless. Because when you exercise through pain, depending on the circumstance, you may be actually injuring yourself more, depending upon, you need to consult with someone about that. Start with fewer repetitions and then work up to more, because again, I don't want you getting a repetitive stress injury from like getting overly enthusiastic and overdoing some kind of exercise and then getting a repetitive stress injury from your corrective exercise. That would totally suck. So start with fewer reps and then like over time, you can work up. Sleeping's a good idea. Eating right. My favorite nutritionist essentially says that 10% of your food intake can be soul food, meaning food that's good for your soul. So, I have like if I could, I would just live on beer and ice cream, but I can't. But, again, that can make up 10% of my diet, beer and ice cream. Woohoo! So, again, but the rest has got to be like whole grains, vegetables, blah, blah, low fats, Also a good environment and furniture. Again, you don't necessarily have to pay money for expensive furniture. You can like experiment with placement, use props, like figure out how to organize your workstation to make it work best for you. And some people are still going to want to sit on the floor, and then they're going to wonder why their neck hurts at the end of the day. So I'm just saying, So if you're feeling creaky before you start drawing, you can also just do some physical warm-up, pain-free full body movements. You can like, I don't know, do some brisk walking. You could just put on some music and dance or jump around the house. You want to use large movements to wake up your muscles and warm your tissues. I actually go to the gym or work out at home every morning before I draw. So I actually do a full workout, but if I'm not doing a full workout, I'm still doing a warm up before I'm going to be sitting down for hours at a time. So like big movements that just get you like loosened up and warmed up are a good idea. Take breaks. We'll talk about that more. Also, you can do a warm up you can do like exercises like during your breaks, and then you can also do essentially like a cool down at the end of your drawing session. So if you have areas that are tight or painful, ending your drawing session with some stretching of those tight areas can be very, very beneficial. On average, a 5-minute break every hour works well. Rest is a prevention and treatment for injury. So you're preventing it and you're treating it. And it also helps to reduce pain and eye strain. But don't use your phone or a tablet or a computer. Like, just stop. Step away from your desk. You know, it's like if you were sitting, you should stand up. If you were standing, you could sit down. You could do some stretching. You could exercise. Again, you could dance around the house a little bit, like play with your dogs or your cats. Like, just do something, right, that is like very different from what you're doing in the moment. And this next slide is essentially the big cash cow. So very important, sehr wichtig, muy importante, and très important, right? So it's a universal truth. So here's the thing. When we're sitting, leaning over our work this way, the back, our neck and back, are the muscles that are holding us up are getting lengthened out, but they're also contracting at the same time to hold our head up. So the muscles are getting longer and they're contracting simultaneously. And what will often happen with people is at the end of the day, after they've been sitting around like this, they'll get up and they'll be like, oh my gosh, my neck and shoulders are so tight. And that's true, but they're tight and long. The muscles are lengthened and tight because they've been lengthened and pulled on. And what I see this happen, someone will be like, oh, I need to stretch. So they'll stretch by going further into the posture. So they'll stretch out the over lengthened muscles. So they'll stretch out the muscles in the back that are already stretched out. And what you really need to do is stretch out the muscles that have been shortened, because the short muscles aren't painful. But if you keep holding them in this position over time, they will literally start to shorten. They will start to shrink a little bit and make the hunched over posture easier and easier to get into. So chest stretches are key to back of the neck and upper back pain. So even though you're feeling it back here, you can stretch back here a little bit, but boy, you really have got to do the chest stretches, because those are the things that are going to save you. Okay, stretch the shorties, not necessarily the longies. So we're going to skip over questions, ignore that slide. And here's a sample movement sequence, and then I'll lead you through it. I'm just going to show you the sequence here. So first we're going to do some loosening up, some shaking mobility exercises for the hands and wrists. Then we'll do a little more intrinsic muscle of the hand, finger warm up. Then we're going to stretch out the muscles of the hands and wrists. Then we're going to start to work on the shoulders, and we'll do some warming up movements for the shoulders. We'll do some exercises to strengthen the muscles that pull the shoulder blades back. And then we'll also do a stretch for the chest. We'll do a stretch for the neck. We'll do a little arching and rounding of our spine. Oh, I went backwards. I didn't mean to go backwards. And then we're going to do a thigh stretch, because that will help to counter a lot of sitting. So now I'm going to stop the share and let me get my list organized. Okay. Alrighty, so when COVID happened, Bob and we hung up curtains all over the apartment so you can't see my messy like like a typical New York crowded apartment. So I'm going to unplug. You guys can still hear me all right? Okay, great. So I'm going to stand up. You can sit for these, but I'm just going to stand up because that will make things a little easier. People will be able to see me. So again, you can sit or stand, either one is fine. And let's go ahead and do the sequence. So again, the sequence is going to cover us from fingertips like all the way through the hips. So just start by shaking your hands like you're trying to get water off them. Just shake them gently. And then shake your hands like you're a really bad drummer or a really bad mime. And now lift your hands and shake them from side to side, like you see a mouse or something and you're screaming. Good. Good. Yeah. And now just spread your fingers and make some fists. So this just starts to warm and loosen the muscles that flex and extend the fingers and wrist. And now we're going to do what's called spider on a mirror, which will warm up the muscles that move the fingertips. So what you do is you touch your fingertips together and you dome your hands and you apply a little bit of pressure, but not too much. You don't want to hyperextend your fingers, right? But apply a little bit of pressure and then you're going to let your fingers spread out and then you're going to dome them back up. So you spread and you dome. So this is going to actually work the muscles that bend your fingers, and it's also going to stretch the muscles between your fingers. So it looks like that. And I almost feel like a little warmth in the center of the palm of my hand because this really works the muscles that help kind of like create the dome of the hand. Okay. Good. All right. So shake that out. And now I'll roll this. So we're going to stretch the muscles. When you do stretches, you want to do both hands and you need to do both sets of muscles on each hand. So we're going to do the muscles first that flex the fingers and the wrist. So you're going to hold your arm out in front of you with your elbows straight and then pull your fingertips up toward the ceiling. Straighten your elbow. Yep, there you go. Okay. So then take your hand, hold onto your fingertips and gently pull them back towards you. And you'll feel the stretch in the forearm, probably. If it hurts, then stretch less, right? You're in charge of you're the master of your destiny here, right? So, okay, good. Now, gently hold onto your thumb and pull it back. Good. Also take a deep breath in and out. Since you're stretching, this will help to relax the muscles. Good, good. Now, drop your fingers down toward the floor. We're going to do the muscles on the back of the wrist. These tend to be more sensitive with this type of stretch, so you may not want to stretch as hard. Hold on to your fingertips, keep your elbows straight, and then gently pull your fingertips back towards you. I have very flexible wrists, so you may not make it this far, right? That's okay. Take a deep breath in and breathe out. Good. And then release your fingers. Now you're going to pull your thumb toward you. Don't do this. This is bad. Don't push your thumb up into your wrist like this. Hold onto your thumb and then just traction it gently back towards you. Good. And take a deep breath in and out. Good. Now we're going to do the stretch for the Dupuytren's contracture tendons right at the top of the wrist. This is a stretch and it's an orthopedic test. And when I do this with people, when I do this with a group of people, inevitably somebody gives a little yelp. If you do this and you feel pain, then you definitely are having tension in these tendons. And you know, if you go to the orthopedist, they'll make you do this to diagnose the thing. So what you're going to do is bend your elbow, put your hand out like you're going to shake hand, thumb toward the ceiling. Now fold your thumb over your palm and hold on to it with your fingers. So now you've made a fist. Now you're going to keep the alignment of your wrist and you're going to drop your hand down toward the floor, your fifth finger. So it's going to look like that. And some people will feel a stretch here and some people won't feel anything. If you don't feel anything, that's great, right? But this is the line of the stretch. You can also straighten your elbow if you want more stretch. For some people, this does more. If you feel pain here, then stretch less. Okay, someone left by. I took my glasses off so I can't tell. Okay, good. All right, good. So shake that out. Let's do the other side. So take your other arm, palm away, faces away, fingers toward the ceiling, straighten your elbow, hold on to your fingers and pull them back. Take a deep breath in and out. Good. Now hold on to your thumb and gently pull it back and breathe again. Good. Let that go. Drop your fingers down toward the floor. Hold on to your fingers. Gently pull. You'll also feel like a different amount of stretch between the right and the left side. One side will be more flexible than the other. That's totally normal. Good. Release that. And now again, gently pull the thumb back, but don't just shove it up into your wrist. Just gently pull it back. Take a deep breath in and out. Give that a little shake. And now we'll do the thumb tendons. So again, thumb toward the ceiling, fold it over your palm, hold on to it with your fingers, take your pinky down towards the floor. If you want more stretch, you could extend your elbow. Again, if you don't feel this, that's great. If you do feel it, you know, just only give yourself as much stretch as is comfortable. Good. Okay, and then shake that out. So now we're going to move on to the shoulders. I'm going to stand sideways to you so you can see my shoulders moving. You can just face the screen, that's fine. And we're going to take a deep breath in and take your shoulders as far forward as you can. And then as you keep inhaling, take your shoulders as high up toward your ears as you can. And then as you exhale, take them back and squeeze them together. And then keep exhaling and take them down. And we'll do that again. So inhale, shoulders go forward and up. And exhale, shoulders go back and down. Do that one more time, going forward and up. And exhale, squeeze back and down. And now we're going to reverse that. So now you're going to inhale, squeeze your shoulder blades together and bring them up. Exhale, bring them forward and down. Inhale, squeeze together, bring them up. Exhale, bring them forward and down. One more time for luck. Inhale, squeeze them together, bring them up. Exhale, go forward and down. Good. And now, so to strengthen the muscles that pull your shoulder blades back, you can do this a couple different ways. You can just let your elbows bend and squeeze your shoulder blades together. Or if you want to make it harder, you can straighten your elbows and try to reach your hands up, but don't let your shoulders lift, right? So this will make it harder. And then the other thing is, don't let your head fall forward like this. You want to try and keep your chin back and up. So this is actually a bit of a challenge. So just take one more deep breath in and out. Good. And then relax. And if you want to build up, strengthen those shoulder blade muscles, you can like hold it for like 10 seconds, do like 5 sets, and that'll give you a good upper back workout. We're not going to do that right now, but that's like something you can do. So when I warm up in the mornings, I'll hold this position for 30 seconds as a way to like really get my back activated. But now we're going to do a chest stretch. So if you can clasp your hands behind your back, that's great, you can do so. If you can't, you can use a towel or a sweater or something and hold on to either end of the towel, right? And the idea here is, again, don't let your head drift forward. Try to keep your head up, but then you straighten your arms. So either your hands holding onto each other or your hands holding onto the towel. right? Mean that essentially you don't have to use your shoulder blade muscles to do that. And then you try to lift your arms a little bit. And you take a deep breath and puff up your chest as much as you can. So you breathe into the top of the chest. And then exhale. Do that one more time. Breathe into the top of the chest. And exhale. Good. And then go ahead and lower down. And now we'll get you a good stretch of the pectoralis major muscles in the front, right? So this is a very important stretch to do at the end of the day when your neck and back are feeling tight, right? You can do the shoulder rolls. Sometimes squeezing the muscles together will also help, but then doing the chest stretch is also really, really good, right? So then let's see. So now we're going to do a neck stretch. If you're sitting, raise your right hip off your seat, put your hand down and then sit on your hand because we want to anchor the right shoulder blade. If you're not sitting, you can, one thing you could do is like reach your right hand around your back and then hold it with your left hand just to anchor your shoulder down. Like that's another way you could do that. Okay. And then you're going to just gently lean your head to the left away from your arm. So here, take a breath in and out, let your head just hang to the side. So you should feel the stretch essentially in the trapezius muscle. Now take another breath in and then keep leaning over, but now turn your head so you're looking down at the ground. And the stretch will shift into the muscles in the back of the neck. Take a breath in and out here. And then as you exhale here, roll your head forward. And then roll your head up. And then drop your arm. Oh, that's pretty good. Like, look at my shoulders, right? You can see my right shoulder is now like a lot lower than my left shoulder. So now we have to even up. So we'll do the other side. So if you're sitting, again, you can sit on your left hand. If you're standing, you can just wrap your hand around your waist and hold on to it. And again, just take a breath in, and then as you exhale, lean your head away. Lean your head to the right, away from your left shoulder. Either way, whatever. Just lean your head away from the shoulder. Other way, Tom. Lean your head the other way. Oh, yeah, there. Good. So breathing in and out. Good. And then this time now gently turn your head down toward the floor. You'll feel the stretch shift into the back of the neck a little bit more. Take a breath in. As you exhale, roll your head forward. And then lift your head up. Well, that worked. Okay, I'm even now, so we can go on. And now, okay, let's finish up with a thigh stretch. I'm gonna adjust my camera here. So this is essentially the good old like heel to hip stretch, but if you can't hold on to your foot behind your back, you can always just put your foot on a chair and then essentially tense up your butt muscle so you press into the front of the thigh, right? And that will give you a good stretch. Otherwise, you can bring your knee forward, hold on to your foot, and you can hold on to a chair for balance. And then try to bring your heel to your hip and drop your knee down. Also, don't let your knee drift out like this. Try to keep it straight down. And you should feel a stretch in the front of the thigh, maybe down the front of the hip, the thigh, or possibly even at the knee. And again, you can use the chair if you need to instead, right? Where you just push through the front of the hip so you feel more open. And here, this is the hip that's going to get replaced on me. So you can see I've got some gap back here, but I'm still feeling the stretch quite a bit. So take a breath in and out. Yay. Okay, so when you release that, let your knee drift forward first and then release it so you don't just thunk it down. Okay, and now let's do the other side. So you can bend your knee, hold on to your foot, Drop the knee down toward the floor. Try to push through the front of the hip. Feel the stretch in the front of the hip, the front of the thigh, or maybe down toward the knee. Don't let your knee pop out to the side. Try to keep it straight down. Take a deep breath in and out. Good. Okay, good. And then lower that down. So sometimes if you've been sitting for a long time, when we stand up, these muscles are short and tight. And so this is kind of the posture your body's trying to go into. So the stretch helps to lengthen out these muscles to bring the pelvis back under. All righty. So come and sit down again if you were standing up. Just take a moment and like sit with good posture, check in with your body, see how you feel. Hopefully things feel a little different. Right, so this is a good sequence, just like it, during break or at the end of the day. Again, just to kind of get everything like warmed up and moving around. So thus endeth the injury horror story, whatever. It has a happy ending. Are there any other questions or anything? Susan?
Hi, this was really helpful. I'm, in the older, been doing lots of things to my body for a long time. My question is, like, how often should we go through that routine? Is once a day?
I think once a day is a good idea. I will do the equivalent of that routine once a day, but I will also throw in like just a couple little stretches during breaks, during other breaks. So I will, like, again, every time I take a break, I get away from the computer, I get away from my Cintiq. Like I will do, I'll just like walk down the hallway or something. I'll do a little stretch. I'll go stare out the window. Like I'll do something to just, again, get myself moving, and I'll probably do a couple stretches. But at the end of the day, I do a pretty extensive exercise.
I'm chuckling because my usual is I walk to the kitchen, which has
Yeah.
other consequences. And is there any way that we could get like a copy of the slides of the exercises, or do you have a PDF of them so we can put it up here and work our way through it?
Well, they're in
your
the book.
Okay.
Plus more, there are even more exercises in the book. So
Fair enough.
you can
Thank
pick
you.
and choose. And also in the book, there are like different suggested combinations. So I give you little like choreographic lists of different types of sequences you can do while you're on break. So yeah. And
Cool.
I think,
Thanks.
yeah.
Thank you.
Posting a link to the book again right now.
That's good.
Do we have other questions? Anybody? A lot of you guys have been quiet, even though I know you're not always quiet. But that's okay.
Sobered.
What?
Totally. We're sobered. It's like,
I know.
many people know I used to work in healthcare. I was a nurse for decades, and it was a big deal in California, in the late 90s, when they made every employer who had more than 7 employees had to provide ergonomic assessments throughout all of their people. The average workers' comp case in the late 90s for repetitive stress injury was $40,000. So
Wow.
companies investing in a little bit of ergonomic equipment was money well spent.
Yeah. But also the thing is that you don't, like, I think companies should invest in ergonomic equipment, but like if you don't have the budget to do it, you can still like make things work with just a little improvisation, and that can work fine. So yeah.
I have a couple other questions. And Ellen also has a question too. Maybe we'll take Ellen's first.
Sure.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi all, thank you so much. This is wonderful. Sometimes I like to work on the floor, but with my legs crossed, and I try to put my workstation sort of at a level where I'm otherwise like aligned. But is that is that okay to work on the floor if you're in alignment, if your legs are crossed, not for the whole time, not for the whole day, but
Yeah, it's sitting cross-legged on the floor can be a real challenge for your hip flexors. So even if you're aligned, if you enjoy doing that and you want to do it, like the younger you are, the better it is. Like I can no longer do that, right? But again, sitting with your hips, your legs crossed like that, especially so I hate to say male pelvis and female pelvis, but like estrogen and testosterone essentially during puberty changed the shape of the pelvis, although I've been told I have a very masculine pelvis, even though I'm a testosterone dependent or a estrogen dependent person. But anyway, your sits bones, like if your pelvis is good at getting a baby out, your sits bones are organized so that it's easier to sit upright on your pelvis. If your pelvis is not organized, if your pelvis was shaped by testosterone during puberty, then it's likely that your sits bones curl under, and sitting cross-legged will curl your pelvis under and be more stressful on your back. So if you can sit comfortably, you can do it. If it's not that comfortable, you can like try to prop your butt up a little higher than your hips, the way they would do in a yoga class, right? Because that can help you stabilize. And then eventually it may, you can just do it for as long as it works, but eventually it may stop working. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So, and again,
Yeah.
like, depending on the shape of the pelvis, it's going to be easier or harder to do. And so it's kind of like, I'd say it would take some experimentation, but if you can sit cross-legged and find a way to keep your work elevated so that you're not like hunching over it, then yeah, just go for it and see what you can do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was totally my question. Like literally that was my question. So thank you, Ellen.
Yeah, if it works, if you have a favorite way of drawing and it works for you and it's not causing you discomfort, then that's fine. Like go ahead and do it. Just try to keep your posture like a little bit more upright, or just be aware that you may need to do some like stretching or some movement afterwards. Like some people like to lie on their stomachs and draw, it's like there are all sorts of ways that people like to draw. Again, like it'll work for a while, but it may not work forever. So once you start to notice discomfort, then I would suggest not insisting on it anymore, because it can start to get problematic eventually. So, but I would also really emphasize, again, thinking like an athlete is a good idea. Like doing exercise activities full body activities that are symmetrical, that you enjoy, I think is really important. I tend to tell people that you should like actively be exercising as many times a week as you are decades old. So if you're in your 20s, you should be doing something twice a week. If you're in your 30s, you should be doing something 3 times a week. If you're in your 40s, 4 times a week, 50s, 5 times a week. After that, I think you can, it's like I'm 58. I don't know if I'm going to go up to 6 times a week, but I'm definitely at, 5 days a week, because like it really, it just becomes really important to keep your like regulating yourself and keeping yourself strong so that you can like maintain a symmetrical body, even as you're doing asymmetrical activities with your work. Plus, cardio stuff. I hate cardio, but I do it anyway. Like, well, not right now because my hip won't let me, but once I get a new hip, I'll go back to cardio. Yay. So anyway, find something physical that you like to do and do it, because it'll help a lot. So good. Anything else? Anybody else?
Anybody else? No. Emma, was this good?
It was wonderful. I wasn't horrified until you mentioned how often we should be exercising, and then I was like,
Well, you know, and exercise is different for different people. Like some people like to take yoga a couple times a week. Some people like to, you know, it's like I like to strength train. The older I get, the more I do cardio because let's face it, you know, as you age, heart disease is, you know, big deal. And also as you age, you start to weaken. You like dance. You know, I could just keep taking dance classes, but that wouldn't take care of things. Like I need to like lift some weights and grunt around and do some other stuff anyway. So, you know, like as we age, our bodies change, and like, again, it's relative. You don't have to, you should do something you enjoy. You don't have to do everything you hate, but you should do cardio anyway. So, but yeah, you know, think like an athlete. It's like your body is your like more important than like your Cintiq or your stylus or your pencil. Like, you know, until we can just draw with our minds, which we cannot yet do, you know, it's like you have got to take care of your body. So anyway, there you go.
I did want to share like the drawing I did of how I was sitting when we started the call, which is no longer how I'm sitting. Like a pretzel.
That's great. Again, sitting that way for an hour and a half is one thing, and sitting that way for like 5 hours is another. So again, it's different, but
All right.
Yeah.
Kriota, thank you so much. This
you're
is
very
really
welcome.
helpful. For me, particularly because COVID has just sort of sapped my energy to maintain my body. It's just been like,
Yeah.
I've retreated, you know, I don't know if anyone else is experiencing that, but so I'm really grateful for this.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, please thank Kriota for being here on a cold Tuesday night, or at least it's cold where I am. And please go buy the book. Buy 2 at Christmas. Buy a few, spread them out.
Stocking stuffer. So.
Yeah, it's terrific.
Well, thank you all. You guys are a great group to do this with.
All right.
Oh, that's so kind. Thank you so much.
Kriota,
Thank you.
sign off.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you so
everybody.
much.